Namaste, beautiful family of light, both on Facebook Live and also on here at the center where beautiful light workers are, and those that are on Zoom. This is Reverend Sharon Elizabeth, also known as Baba Sharon, at the Cosmic Center Spiritual Light, located in Sarasota, Florida. Hello, at whatever time you may see this on Facebook, that will be the eternal now. So, one of the things I wanted to uh, talk about is kind of tied into what we did for the Sunday service yesterday. I really want to talk about assumptions. Assumptions. That's the word that came in. And as we start, awakening on our spiritual path, we can no longer do assumptions at all. In fact, as you know, I always say this, you have to question everything. Okay, so I'm going to give you an example. I'm going to give you an example. So many, many, many moons ago, I started my own business. It was a human resource management company. And in that era, okay, there wasn't a lot of women that were doing their own business or started a business. There weren't a lot. It was just that time where it was just emerging, where women were now moving into what was traditionally a male-dominated work environment. And I know I did that in the insurance industry, so I wasn't new to the environment in terms of certain assumptions being made. So I'm going to give you an example. All right. So when I opened up my company, okay, it was called Zanko. And my name of my son. It was a human resource management company. And as you open up, you have other businesses that welcome you. They want to share their services that they have and so forth. And invariably, all the marketing all of the marketing letters I received said, Dear Mr. James. It was the automatic assumption, okay, that the business owner was a male. Okay, so, I just ditched that. If you didn't take the time to look and see who it is, I just decided, well, I don't think I'm really interested in your services. The second thing I've had where I'm standing right there in the office, and I've had people come in and bypass me and go to one of my male employees and start talking to them. And they would have to say, No, no, I'm not the president. She is. Okay. So from early on, I could see where life, okay, can just bring you along on information and assumptions that is 100% not correct. Now, it's not as much as it was in the past as it is right now. There's been the continued evolution, of course, with men and women in the workplace and other things like that. But it's just an example of how assumptions. Now, why would somebody assume that? Because that has been the program. So I'm in the era of Dick and Jane. Okay. So, yes, there was a little pamphlet book in school. It was called Dick and Jane, and it was very clear as to what Dick did, okay, and the jobs that he was going to do, and very clear, okay, if she was not going to be raising a family, okay, just exclusively that these were a couple of things that she could do. So, you can't really get upset if somebody is making an assumption of something because the program is so deep. It really is. And on this awakening that we are on, this is why we must start to be the explorer. Okay, we have to be the explorer. We have to say, okay, I'm going to wipe out all of this programming. Okay, of course, you don't throw it all out. You take the parts that are good, but the ones that you don't know about, you have to say, for example, know exactly what am I celebrating, or what are the morning days, which I'm always talking about. We have all these agreements that we just click with technology, and who's going to read the 10 pages? Okay, we just do it to move forward, but we are not aware of what we are consenting to. Okay, that's real important. Now, there may be dynamics in world affairs, okay, that are being done in my name. And I said, I never agreed to that. I never said to do that. What are you doing? No, no, no. And generally, where you see the conflicts the most, it's not the people of nations, it's the governments. And it's a club. And I like, what's his name? Well, he was a comedian. He was so funny. He was way ahead of his time. And he says, it's a big club and you're not part of it. You're not part of it. So there's other things going on. So one of the things it says in the Bible, and it says it over and over and over again, it says, do not be deceived. Do not be deceived. The other thing it says in the Bible, as I mentioned yesterday's Sunday service, it says, do not be afraid. Do not be afraid. Do not be afraid. Because what is the biggest program to manipulate and deceive is fear. Okay, so we have to find it within ourselves to transcend that. And not only do we transcend the fear, we have to start to tap in into the higher parts of ourselves. You could call it the higher self, the overself soul, whatever, the higher parts of ourselves. Okay, that has this higher wisdom, that has this higher knowledge. Okay, we have to start training ourselves or programming ourselves to trust our own intuition. Okay, we have to start to do that. Now, the good news is in the age of Aquarius, we have access to information, all kinds of information. So I'm sure many of you do not know about the book of Mani. That's where the word Manichaeans comes in, the Apocrypha of John, the Gospel of Thomas, the Gospel of Philip. And what about, we just had a Mary Magdalene initiation, the Gospel of Mary, which is about Mary Magdalene. What about the Pista Sophia? Like, wow, what are these? Okay, now you have the Nag Hammadi. Somebody took these scrolls and went out of their way to hide them for future generations that were hidden for 1,700 years. The Nag Hammadi. Why did they hide them? If they hid them, there's probably something you need to read and find out. The same thing happened with in Qumran with the Dead Sea Scrolls. There's a lot of information that's going on with that. So what's important? Okay, we cannot assume anything. So the minute you start to say, oh, well, well, not necessarily, or you start to become more precise and what you bring into your mind, what thoughts are there, start monitoring and saying, am I do this on automatic pilot because my mother's always done it, my grandmother's always done it, my great okay, where is the source of this coming in? I always tell a little joke about a husband, they get married, his wife, she's always cutting off the end of this roast when she cooks it. And he says, well, why are you doing that? My mother did it. He asked the mother. She said, my mother did it. He finally gets to the grandmother and she says, well, I cut it off because my oven was too small. Okay, so that's sort of the idea, like, oh, we don't need to do that anymore. And it's really, really important because we are moving into a time of what wants to be great confusion, distortion, miscreations. Okay, how are you going to maneuver through all of that stuff? One, you don't assume a thing. Start doing your research. Number two, discern, discern, discern. And how do you do that? By number three, trusting your own intuition. And just like a physical muscle that you have to start to work, the same thing with your spiritual muscle. Okay, like sometimes we get so busy, there's a fleeting thought that comes in, we ignore it. Okay, because we're too busy. Even if you just say, note to self, that thought came in. Even if you start doing that because you're starting to develop energetic ties to higher parts of yourself that's trying to communicate with you. Why? Okay, because you are a multidimensional being, so much more than this physical body. And one of the assumptions, the big assumption, is that we are defined by our physical body. We're defined by what job we have. We're defined, we have a family or a house and how big is the house and what kind of car you have. That's our definition. As I mentioned yesterday, you see people that lose their job and that was their identity and they freak out. No, but your identity is truly way beyond this physical world. And that's always what we have to remember, which is why it is important to question everything and assume nothing. Okay, so I'm just going to share with you, as I mentioned before I actually got on Facebook, I had said, hey, does anybody know what the counterfeit spirit is? And most of the group here, that's on Zoom and here at the center, don't know about the counterfeit spirit. Okay, but I'm going to tell you, it's been written about, okay, in the Pistis Sophia. It's been written about in the Apocrypha of John. It's been written about in the Gospel of Philip, in the exegesis of the soul, the hypothesis of the archons, the Book of Jude, in the Hermetic and Manichaean writings. So this is from different sources, from different times, by the way, that are all speaking about this. They call it different names, but it is called the counterfeit spirit. So basically, what it is, the counterfeit spirit is an artificial psychic force implanted into human beings by the rulers. And from the Gnostic tradition, they would call them the archons, to imitate the true spirit and keep souls bound to ignorance, desire, karma, and reincarnation. And one of the greatest things, okay, one of the greatest things is like, wow, how is everything getting away? What is it that we have to not be is ignorant. All of this is happening because of ignorance. And there was some sci-fi movie I saw, very, very uh Tony Leonard. I'm impressed you know about Manny. He seemed important to me too. Oh, wonderful, Tony. I'm impressed too. So one of the things I saw this sci-fi movie, I don't remember the name, it's just a little recap, but the basic of it is this uh these people they were going to go out into space because whatever was happening with the earth, and they had to find a colony someplace else, and it was like, I don't know, 100-year mission or whatever it is. So these humans get on there, and they have it where they can have their own space, and they grow food, and they can have children and so on and so forth. In other words, they're on the spaceship, but that's not there are many, many beings that are and live on ships, by the way. And but the story is, okay, that there's this young girl and she's like really developing her psychic abilities and she's intuitive, and people saying, "Oh, you're sick or you have a fever or something." She says, "No, something's not right. This is not real. We're not going anywhere." Okay, and of course, because she's little, they all ignore her. Turns out the story is there is this spaceship. Okay, they are living inside the spaceship, but it's on Earth because the people told them you're going to go out and explore and develop a colony. First, wanted to have a test run on Earth. So all these people are in a matrix. They don't know it. They're like, and they have, the covering where you see the stars and this and the other, but then glitches started to happen along the way. Little glitches. And that's what we have to start paying attention. If something didn't make sense to you when you were a little kid, do not ignore that, particularly when you're little. If you say, I have a lot of questions, why? Kids, why? 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 Because they're seeking to understand and know the truth of things. That's the reason. And I know I used to get, well, that's just the way it is. I used to get that answer all the time. Well, that's just the way it is. But why? Because it's the way it is. But why is it the way it is? So, you can go down that rabbit hole. Look at little kids. Okay, learn from them, see what they do, and apply it to that. So, we are now aware of the counterfeit spirit. And what do you say to counterfeit spirit? As I said yesterday in Sunday service, you want to check out what I said on Sunday service, is that you could say that the creator has this really nice design and this creation, but someone comes along and puts a virus in there. That's what it is. That's the counterfeit story. So you have to be aware of that. You have to be very discerning. You have to understand that there's an agenda, okay, with the counterfeit spirit is ingrained, but that part of us that's the light, that's the flame, the true source of where we come from, that can burn that away. But first, you have to be aware. With that beautiful family of light, I will see you next time. Baba Sharon here. Bye.